It's got to be turned up a little bit.
So if I turn it off?
I turned it off when I was over here. Kept making
Okay. That's why.
It's really nice.
Oh, all right. Now I know how to do it. I had it all turned on and tested and set up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
Okay, how's this? Oh, that's just
There.
Yeah.
That is better.
All right. Yes. Okay, so this is another chunk from Meichi's memoir. Right? Okay. Act 1. The cabin was dark, buzzing, and the shade came down. I looked down at Anya, the little girl I had brought into the world 30 days earlier, and she was sleeping quietly in my arms. Now we were flying 40,000 feet above the ground. That was probably the distance between me and the city people after I left that small village. At this time, my destination was Fargo, which should be translated as far away as I can go. Like the airplane at its current altitude, I really want to go far and fly high now. Looking around, all the people in the front and back rows seem to be concentrating on their own independent space. Hundreds of strangers crowded in this big iron pipe, like the belly of a whale, sharing their fates but not recognizing each other. The baby cried. I gently opened the big shawl, wrapped around my shoulders to peep at little Anya. I lifted my jacket to feed her. It amazed me that she had a conditioned reflex, catching the breast and sucking. Little Boo Boo stared at me with one eye open and one eye closed. I looked at her lovely appearance. "Hey, little bird," I said gently. She looked at me and laughed, as if she understood her name, but at the same time, the nipple slipped out of her mouth and sprayed out like a fountain. Her face was full of milk. I also laughed and wiped her quickly and wrapped her in a big scarf. "Your baby is so good," the woman next to me said. "How old is she?" "She's just 30 days old," I said with a smile. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Fargo, North Dakota," I said. "Where are you going?" "San Francisco." "You go to Fargo? Oh my God, that's a ghost place. It's freezing. Have you ever been there?" "No, this is my first time there," I said. "How did you go there? Every place in the United States is better than that," she chattered. It's a place where birds don't shit." "Why do you say that?" I asked. "It's a very boring place with no scenery, long and cold winters, always snowing, and people's minds are closed. By the way, there's a movie called Fargo. I suggest you watch it." I didn't like what she said, so I answered her back. "I saw that film, so I decided to go there." "Why did you choose to go there?" Her whole fat body turned around to ask me. "I really don't understand." "I have a strong taste, and I like winter very much." I closed my eyes and stopped talking to her. After 12 hours in the air, the plane arrived in Chicago. While I was waiting for the next flight in the terminal, I was finally able to talk to my husband, Jason. He spoke happily on the phone, and I could hear his excitement that it wouldn't be long until he could see his wife and daughter. He said that it was his greatest regret to come back for more than 2 months to arrange for housing and work and miss accompanying me to have our child. He was thinking about me and our daughter every day, but in a few hours, the 3 of us would be reunited. This time, we would never be separated again. When I gave birth, my parents-in-law accompanied me in Beijing. After the baby was born, my father-in-law returned to work. My mother-in-law stayed with me and Anya to help me with everything that came next. The long journey back to the U.S. made her legs swell, and she pressed her finger on a pit, which worried me a lot. But she said it was okay. She would just rest for a few days. She was happy. My mother-in-law had 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Jason was the eldest son. The other children were not married yet. Anya was also the first granddaughter of the family, so she was very valued. Anya traveled very well. Besides sleeping and eating, she occasionally played for a while, but she didn't cry or make any noise. I said to Bub, "We'll see Dad in a minute. Your dad is there waiting to pick us up." Anya's hair was about 2 or 3 inches long. It shone golden in the light. Her dark blue eyes were like Jason's. She looked a lot like me, but more like Dad in general. I can't imagine how I could have a foreign child. My mother-in-law said that the color of the eyes of a mixed-race child will gradually change from blue to dark, and the hair will also change to dark. She said she wanted her granddaughter to look more like me. I laughed and said I wanted her to be more like her father. My mother-in-law laughed happily. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, the plane finally landed in Fargo. As soon as I got out of the cabin, I felt the cold air and shivered and felt winter coming. Taking the long walk through the terminal, I heard a familiar voice, "Mei-chi, Mei-chi," coming from the elevator entrance downstairs. Jason had been waiting there for a long time with a huge rose in his hand. After kissing and hugging me, my husband began to enthusiastically introduce his family to me. What touched me most was Jason's grandmother. There was a banner in her hand, which said in Chinese, "Welcome to your new home, welcome to your new home." A warm current came into my heart to know that she was 91 years old that year and still would meet us at the airport at 1 o'clock in the morning. The importance of a family that I never had before made my tears come out. Jason cut a very tall figure in a blue shirt, a red and white tie, and blue trousers. He took his coat and put it on me with a smile. "It's not Beijing here, it's cold outside." He held me and our child in his arms tightly and took a long time to let go. I looked up at him, crying and laughing. He wiped my tears with a tissue from his pocket and said happily, "I knew you would cry, but I think it is tears of joy." Then, for the first time, Jason picked up his child and showed her off to his family, as if he had just won an Olympic gold medal. He was so excited that he didn't know what to do. Boo Boo was raised over his head, but she didn't cry. It was as if she had known her father for a long time. Everyone applauded. Jason held the child in one hand and hugged me in the other and said, "Let's go home." All of us, immersed in the joy of the arrival of this new life, gathered around to appreciate and praise little Anya. Jason's brother Eric, like a photographer, snapped pictures at every moment. My father-in-law told Jason to let me have a good rest. Then they said goodbye to each other and got on the bus and went home. "It's so cold. How do you survive winter?" I asked Jason. "The weather here is much colder than in Beijing. Today is Halloween, the busiest holiday of the year in the United States. It's winter from today," Jason said. "Halloween? Is that your Ghost's Day?" I asked. "Yes, October 31st. Remember that you arrived in this country on Halloween, and I can take you out tonight to experience it." "That's terrible," I said. "It's not a good day." Jason laughed. "Are you afraid?" "Of course I'm not afraid. There are no ghosts in the world." "But wasn't I on plane number 31? How did I get here?" I felt a little confused. "Jet lag," he said. "You arrived earlier in time than when you left China. I know it's strange. You get to live an extra day." He laughed again. "Oh, I see." I looked out of the window, and the endless land was rolling by, covered with flat buildings and dotted with stars above. There are 100,000 people in this town. There are some tall buildings in the center of the city, but there is no need to build tall buildings elsewhere. After you have a good rest, I'll show you around. "It's totally different from Beijing. It's so fresh and interesting," I said happily. "Are you ready to live in America? Of course, we could move someplace busier and more beautiful. We don't always have to live here," he said. "I don't care where I live, as long as I have you. I like it." I held Anya in my arms. "Yes, baby, the place with Father is the most beautiful and the best place." Jason laughed happily. The car pulled into a small neighborhood and stopped. Several apartment buildings appeared in front of me. "It's home," Jason said with a laugh. "I'll take you upstairs for a rest and then come back to pick up your luggage." "Take a suitcase and I'll carry the baby myself," I told him. He got out of the car and opened the door for me. Then he took out a box from the car and pointed at the building. "There, on the 3rd floor. Do you see that lighted window? That's our home." I used to deny intuition and supernatural forces, like some old buildings may be troubled by something. Of course, I was an atheist who had grown up under the red flag of China, and I had no faith at that time. Although I had experienced some strange things from my mother when I was a child, I believed that it was the result of her brain madness. But when I looked up at the window in the direction Jason pointed, I saw someone looking at us from behind the curtain. But at that time, it didn't trouble me. I thought there were more relatives waiting for us. It was a rather old apartment building with a huge lawn, wooden handrails, and a clean brown marble floor. Years later, recalling that memory, I knew as soon as the door was opened that something was wrong. I glimpsed again the figure in front of the window, but I thought I must be seeing things, and I didn't think much about it. When I entered the room, I saw a handful of roses in a glass bottle in the kitchen. The kitchen was small but tidy, and the bedroom was covered with rose petals. All the sensitivities I had just had were drowned out by freshness and happiness. But then, strange things began to happen, one after another. It wasn't until 9 months later that I realized how special my new home was.
Thank you for reading, Jennifer.
Yep.
Who has feedback for Meiji? Mary?
Yeah, I really want this to be a jolt from China to Fargo, North Dakota. I know Fargo. We have to drive through it when I go see my mother-in-law. So I know Fargo. And I kind of want, I like the cold,